Now, that's because this farmer knew that you can't judge change, either good fortune or misfortune, because it's part of a larger whole. And we can't always see the entire picture. We teach here in Unity that it's all God. There's nothing but God going on. We sometimes can't understand and have no idea why the change is happening or how to deal with the change, but it will happen regardless. And God is right there in the midst of it. Well, thank you to the choir. And to Roderick and to our band, Matt, Glenn, and Steve, we appreciate you. Well, again, I'm Reverend Cindy Wright, and I'm your guest speaker for this morning. And my talk title this morning is The Spirituality of Change. Now, I gave a talk similar to this after 9/11, when our whole world was shaken up and had a major change. And our church has just experienced a major change, so I thought this was a good opportunity to approach this subject. Now, you're lucky, because when I did this talk last time, I reversed the order of service, because I wanted the congregation to really feel that change. So we started with the peace song and the prayer for protection and the love offering, and went all the way to the opening prayer. I can tell you it really confused those who showed up late. So I didn't do that this morning, not sure I had the power to do that anyway. But I am going to talk today about change and how comfortable or uncomfortable we are when things are changing all around us, and how we can look at it from a spiritual perspective. We experience change all the time, and lately it kind of feels like change has been speeding up on our planet, and we're certainly experiencing what feels like tremendous change in this church. And as much as we'd like to get away from what's happening, as much as we'd like to avoid change, it continues to happen, whether we're paying attention or not. And while it certainly feels like change is speeded up, the truth is it happens all the time. Maybe a little more subtly than it has been recently, but it happens constantly. Now, I know each of you go through personal changes, and not all changes are bad. Maybe you get married or have a baby, or you move, or you get a new job. And while it might feel exciting at the time, it's still a little unsettling because you have to figure out where you are in this new place. You know, and at the beginning of the new year, we make resolutions, which are changes that we think are good for us. And even though we've chosen them, we still resist, don't we? History has shown us that our resolutions last for about a couple of weeks. Now, we have a gym where we live, and I can tell you, if you go to the gym on January 2nd, it's so crowded you can't find a parking place. But by about the 20th, it's back to normal. Now, I recently had cataract surgery a little over a month ago, and I'm not healing as fast as I would like. I'm not seeing things as clearly, and so I've blown up my notes. And if you see me looking down at them a lot, that's probably why. Now, I'm not very patient, but if I'm truthful, there has been some improvement. It's just taking longer than I hoped. But you know, you can't rush the process. Other change is uncomfortable. You know, you get a divorce, someone dies, you get sick, a minister separates from your church. We don't like change, and yet it's not an option. Everything has to change. From the time we're conceived, we're not even born yet, and things are changing. Change isn't an option, no matter how much you fight it, no matter how much you diet and work out, suck your gut in. Your body's still going to change. Trust me on that. And it's not just our bodies that change. Our belief systems change. Our thoughts change. Our feelings change. But where we get into stress and trouble about those changes is when we judge them as bad. Now, most of you have probably heard this story before, but it's so fitting during this time that I wanted to share it again. It's about the farmer. The farmer was working in his field, and he had a very, very sick horse, and he kind of took pity on him, and so he let the horse go and decided to let him live out his last life in peace. And all of the neighbors came and said, "Oh, how horrible. You've lost your only horse. How are you going to survive?" And the farmer just said, "Who knows? We shall see." Well, 2 days later, the horse came back and brought with it a whole bunch of more wild horses that followed him into the corral. And of course, then the village people all crowded around and said, "Oh, how fortunate you are. Wonderful. Look, you've got all these brand new horses." And the farmer said, "Who knows? We'll see." At daybreak the next morning, the farmer's only son went out and he was trying to train one of the wild horses. Well, he fell off and broke his leg. And again, all the neighbors came up and said, "Oh gosh, that's awful. Your only son who helps you on the farm is injured now. What are you going to do?" And the farmer again said, "Who knows? We shall see." Well, again, there was a war that broke out, and the emperors came and were calling all the young men to go off to war. Well, the farmer's son had a broken leg and he couldn't go. And again, all the neighbors said, "Oh, how fortunate you are, wow." And again, the farmer said, "Who knows? We shall see." You know, the story goes on, and there is no resolution to it. Each time, the farmer just says, "Who knows? We shall see." Now, that's because this farmer knew that you can't judge change, either good fortune or misfortune, because it's part of a larger whole. And we can't always see the entire picture. We teach here in Unity that it's all God. There's nothing but God going on. We sometimes can't understand and have no idea why the change is happening or how to deal with the change, but it will happen regardless. And God is right there in the midst of it. One day everything's going to change. We're going to step off this earth plane. We're going to leave our bodies, our personalities, our intellects. We know it's inevitable, and yet we still resist it, don't we? And you know, we might be open to change in some areas and resistant in other areas. Most of us are kind of creatures of habit. You know how you drive the same way home every day or the same way to work. You might eat at the same restaurants. Some of us even order the same food at the same restaurant. I do that. There's one restaurant I love, Dos Salsa. I order the same thing every time I go there because I love it and I look forward to eating it. Sometimes, you know, we do the same thing over and over again, not even knowing or thinking about why we do it. It's like the woman who cut the end of the roast off every time before putting it in the oven. And her mother came one time and saw her doing that and say, "Why are you cutting the end of the roast off?" And the daughter said, "Well, Mom, that's what you always did." And she said, "Well, yeah, but I didn't have a pan big enough to fit the roast, and you do." So now I want you to do an experiment with me. I want you to put your hands up and clasp your hands and I want you to notice which thumb is on top. How many people have the right thumb? How many people have the left thumb? Now look around. Everybody has different comfort zones, don't they? Now I want you to do it the opposite and do the other thumb on top. How does that feel? Not quite as comfortable, huh? It's a little bit awkward. We all have our comfort zones, and not everybody's comfort zones are the same. And when life moves out of our comfort zone, we feel stressed and uncomfortable. Sometimes change is in our control, and other times change happens and we have no say in it at all. I'm thinking, for instance, of the war in Ukraine. You know, those people didn't have a choice about what's happening to them. And yet they have responded with resilience and strength. And we pray for them and wish them well. Many of you, I'm sure, feel like you didn't have a choice as to what happened in this church. Our world has changed, our church has changed, and our only choice is in how we choose to react to what happened. Will we act from fear and anger or from love and trust in God? Will we take this as an opportunity to grow and learn or heal, or will we go right back to life as usual? And the truth is, this church never really did the job of healing. Ron and Lenore left, Steve left. We didn't do that healing, grieving work. And then Brian and Christian came and they left abruptly, and we did hire an interim who started to do that healing work, and then COVID hit and everything changed. And I can tell you, if we don't take the time now to grow and heal and change, then we'll create a vision. We have to create the vision after we've healed, but if we don't do that, we're going to just have another bigger change, because that's the nature of life. We may not understand what happened or why it happened in our lives with any change happens. But it's because we believe in unity, we know that God is there. There's nothing but God happening. Divine order is unfolding. We might not understand it, but it is part of a bigger plan. And there's a part for all of us to play in it. We're not victims ever. And we have some responsibility in all of this, and we're given an opportunity to become involved and to choose. So it's imperative that we do the work. And for some of you, when an interim comes and we have those healing workshops, it might mean that you have to come to a workshop other than a Sunday to do that work. For some of you, you just might choose to get more involved, be a greeter, work in the garden, attend a gratitude circle. I encourage you to do that because it will help your personal life as well as this church. You know, change always presents us with a fork in the road. You know, we can get hit, we can get knocked down, get up, keep going the same way as before, or we can see it as an opportunity where we might need to go in a different direction. We have the opportunity, as we have never before, to choose to do the healing work. And you know, most people want to rush and fill that emptiness when there's a change. We feel frustrated if things aren't resolving itself fast enough. There are people that go from one marriage to another without taking the time to reflect, or one job to another. Transformation often takes time, and you can't rush the progress. Think for a minute about a butterfly. Have any of you ever watched a caterpillar coming out of the cocoon? I have. I got to see it in Canada. They had a building there where they had all these different cocoons, and I stood there for the longest time and watched struggle, 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 and then rest, and then struggle, struggle, struggle. And I stood there for the longest time thinking if I stood there long enough, surely the butterfly would come out. But do you know it takes about a month from the beginning of the process to the end of the process? And do you realize what a lifespan of a butterfly is? It's about a month. So that's like a lifetime of transformation just to get to become that butterfly. Sometimes when change happens for us, we need to take the time to just sit with the change for a while so we can grow and change and get stronger and clearer about what is ours to do next. You can't rush into visioning until you've been still and take time to just heal. And it takes time, and we need to be patient, just like that caterpillar. I'm sure it feels like a struggle, but it never gives up. Keeps going stronger and stronger. And you know, sometimes you think you can help it. You can help that butterfly, but if you did that, the butterfly would die. It needs that struggle in order to get strong for its wings to be able to fly. You know, change might be easier if there were clear-cut ways of dealing with new situations. It's like if this happens, you do this. And if this happens, you do that. But there are no permanent solutions to anything. Think about it for a moment. Do you realize there's a setting on your iron for permanent press? If it's so permanent, why do you have to iron it? I used to get permanents when I was in my 20s. And I would go to my hairdresser and say, well, if it's such permanent, why do I have to keep coming back here? And she says, well, I perm all the hair you give me. If you choose to grow more, it's not my fault. Now, I want you to know this is not a perm. This is product and scrunching. Now, had I known in my 20s that I could put product in my hair and scrunch it, I would have saved a whole lot of money. But there is nothing that's permanent. Everything has to change. We all know that change is inevitable. So how can we make ourselves ready? How can we make change easier? Well, there are some spiritual practices that we can follow. And the first practice is to not judge the change, to realize that it's God going on. We don't have to understand. We don't have to rush the process. We just have to stay open to God's guidance and know that God is right there in the midst of it. The second practice is to be here now, in this moment. You know, our anxiety only comes when we're hanging out in the past or we're trying to project things into the future. Be here right now. You don't have any choice but to stay in the present moment. You can't go backwards. You can't jump forward into the future. You have to stay in this present. And in this present moment, be grateful for where you are in this present moment and allow God to guide your steps. The third practice is to be still, to develop a practice of inner listening. You know, the Bible tells us, be still and know that I am God. We have to still our vibration. Everything in the world is vibration. God is vibration. We are vibration. And sometimes we are not in resonance with God's vibration. So we need to take that chaos of our mind and still it so that we can connect with that vibration of God. When we begin to listen, we start to develop a whole different way of relating to change, because we see it as an opportunity to grow rather than something to resist, rather than something to judge as good or bad. We begin to ask ourselves, how can I see God in this situation? So I invite you to develop your own sense, your own method of getting still. Now, for a lot of people, that'll be meditation, and that's usually what people think of when they think of being still. But there are other ways besides sitting in the lotus position and meditating. The key is your intention. Anything you do with the intention of being still can be a channel for you to be still. Taking a walk in nature, if you're not thinking and you're just being in the present moment. For some people, working out in the garden. For some people, it's maybe just taking a bath and just being still. For me, sometimes it's my art. I'll light a candle, I'll put on some music, and I'll just get in the moment and just be still. I also think it's important that we come together to be still. The Bible tells us where two or more are gathered together, there am I in the midst of them. Our vibration gets stronger when we join together. We can bring about change quicker in our lives and on our planet. So I invite you to find a prayer partner, come to church and connect with the vibration going on here, pray with a prayer chaplain. I'm thinking maybe at some point we could have prayer circles here at church where people could come together, just hold the silence and open themselves up to God's healing and vision of what's ours to do. When we take the time to be still, then we can take the being to the next level and to be the Christ that we were meant to be. And the fourth practice is to be yourself, to be your higher self, to really believe that there's an intelligence within you, a God seed, a Christ seed. Remember the truth of who you are, live that truth, marvel at that truth, because who you are is wonderful. St. Augustine wrote, people travel to wonder at the height of mountains, at the huge waves of the sea, at the long courses of rivers, at the vast compass of the ocean, at the circular motion of the stars, and they pass by themselves without ever wondering. We pass by who we are without ever pausing and marveling at the wondrous creation that we are. We can think, we can change what we think, we can choose love, we can make a difference here. The fifth and last practice is to see the presence of God in others. It's important that we become willing to be all that we can be, for the universe certainly wants us to act big, but it's also important that we see others as that Christ presence. No matter what we're doing, driving down the road, at work, at home, at church, sitting on the beach, that we really get to look and see that everyone we see is either God in hiding, God in process, or God realized. That's all that can be. And many of us have played God in hiding. You know you're God in hiding when you're raging at others, when you're blaming others, when you're in self-pity. You know you're God in hiding when you're saying, how can I get out of this mess? Or how did I or we get into this mess? How did we get here? It's important to realize everyone is an expression of God, whether they are fully expressing it or not. And the more we can see that in ourselves, and the more we can see it in others, and the more they can open up and find it in themselves. So make a commitment right where you are today to make a difference in the lives of others, in this community, in this church, in the future of the world. When we listen to Spirit, you will find yourself right where you need to be at the right time. So to recap, those 5 spiritual steps are: don't judge the change, Be here now in the present moment, not in the past, and find something to be grateful for right there in that present. Be still and know that God is at work in the midst of whatever is happening. 4 is to be your highest self in the midst of the changes going on. And 5 is to see that Christ presence in others, which will help them see it in themselves. Mother Teresa said, and I'm going to end with this today, most of us aren't going to change the world in big ways, but each one of us can change the world every day by doing small things with great love. We can transform our world, our church, through love, one moment, one life, one person at a time. God bless you.
Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I circulate, and I am grateful.